Hey guys, it's Miss Edwards, and I'm back for some more Swipe. Okay, the book we've been listening to in library. It's been a couple classes since we picked back up. So if you forget what's going on, you can always scroll back up through the posts of the special pages and find my YouTube posting for the previous chapters. Last time we were listening to chapter 2, and we listened to part 1, 2, and 3, I believe. We got away from our main character and we started learning about a new character. Her name is Erin Arbiter, and we met her dad. Apparently, he does something for the government or whatever's in place in lieu of the government in this new world. Somehow, he was saying that they're responsible for the swipe mark. We learned more about the mark, that you can do things with it. So I haven't listened to this book. I'm listening to it with you for the first time. So I don't know if we're going to go back to the main character, if we're going to hear more about her, or if they're going to take us to a new place. Okay, I'm not sure. So I'm excited to see where we go. All right, so we're going to do chapter 2, part 4, and then start chapter 3, and there's 5 parts in chapter 3. So we're not going to listen to them all together. I'm going to see how long they are and determine how many parts we're going to listen to. So we're on chapter 2, part 4. And then we're going to start chapter 3, probably part 1 and part 2, and then we'll see from there. All right, so I'm going to screen share with you the Epic Books. All right, here we are, back to our swipe page. See chapter 2, part 4. Let me share my audio with you so you can all hear. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of grading while we're listening, so I'm going to turn my camera off so that you're not distracted by looking at me. All right, just take a deep breath, clear your head, and enjoy the story.
After returning from the new dome office where Mr. Arbiter had taken her that afternoon, Erin spent the night unpacking, alone in an unfamiliar apartment on the 17th floor of a complex at the edge of a town she knew nothing about. It would have had a nice view if the small skyline hadn't looked so lonely to Erin. The lights weren't even enough to wash out the stars, and to her it looked as if no one was home, anywhere. She stared out the window and thought of the starscape in her new school, of the moon wing in the administrative hall, of the secretary at the desk. "Government work," she said. "That's right." And the look on her face that followed. What was it Erin didn't know about her father's job? She turned to fill the shelves and closets and tabletops with tablets and clothes and mementos from Beacon. But looking around the apartment now, Erin couldn't help but notice that the place her father had chosen was really only big enough for the two of them and the lizard. So instead, Erin said goodnight to Iggy, turned off the heat lamp above his cage, and placed a family album frame by her bed to watch its slideshow. She sat above the covers for a long while, thinking sadly of her mother back home, knowing that she wasn't on her way, knowing that it wasn't just a matter of weeks, and wondering honestly when they'd see each other again. In that moment, Erin was reminded of quiet summer evenings like this growing up, when, like now, her father would stay late with work. Except those nights were never so lonely, because always Dr. Arbiter would be home too, reading to Erin while they waited for Dad in the late hours. She would read Erin anything, not just children's stories, but news articles and editorials and classic literature, insisting that the world was ready for Erin, and that Erin was ready for it, whether or not she still sucked her thumb. This made Erin feel like the luckiest kid in the world. One summer years ago, Erin and her mom even plowed through the entire works of Shakespeare, acting out all the parts in their pajamas over the course of the passing weeks. And every night, by the second or third or fourth act of a given play, Mr. Arbiter would return home and take his share of the spotlight. usually making up his own parts and speaking in silly voices and fully derailing the story as he did, much to his wife's chagrin and his daughter's delight. But those memories were far away now, impossible even, and with a small sigh, Erin rolled out of bed to turn off the picture frame so she could finish moving in without distraction. It wasn't until halfway through emptying her last box that she finally got a call from Dad. "I'm gonna be late at work, sweetie," he said. "It already is late," Erin told him. "I'm practically done unpacking." "That's great. Maybe you could empty some of my stuff too? Just lay it out for me. Don't stay up too late or anything, but just some clothes and essentials for tomorrow." "Sure, Dad," Erin said, seeing no advantages to a refusal. She lifted the top few boxes off his pile without complaining, but soon found herself running a hand over one that caught her eye. "Hey, Dad," she asked, just before ending the call. "Yeah?" Erin chewed her bottom lip. "When are we going to be a family again?" In her tablet, Erin could see her dad smile sadly. "That's up to your mom, Erin." "Then we're not going back, are we?" Mr. Arbiter sighed. "Someone's making a mess in Spokey, Erin, and the Department of Marked Emergencies thinks I'm the best man to clean it up. If I can do that quickly, we'll go home. If not, well, listen. I really think you're gonna like it here." "What's the mess?" Erin asked. "Just tell me already. Give me something to believe in." Mr. Arbiter pointed to his mark over the connection and winked. "You're not going to tell me, are you?" Erin said. She was tired of her father's deflections, and for the first time, she had a reason to care. "Government work," Mr. Arbiter said, and he ended the call. Erin stared at the box under her hands. "Dome," it read across the top. "Confidential." Erin knew it was not hers to open. She knew it was strictly her father's, his documents from the department, which at any other time would be locked away in so remote a corner that Erin wouldn't even think to look. And yet, in the haste and chaos of the move, here they were, right in front of her, separated from Erin by only a thin layer of cardboard and some tape. Under ordinary circumstances, Erin wouldn't have dreamed of opening the box. Under ordinary circumstances, she couldn't have imagined anything inside being of any interest. But Erin was angry and lonely and far from home. She wanted, she deserved, to know why. So Erin peeled the tape from the lid. It took her several minutes to remove the strip without tearing the cardboard underneath. She knew there could not be a trace of what she had done. Her heart pounded. In all his years with the department, Mr. Arbiter hadn't once brought home a story. Hadn't once shared a single interesting thing he'd done that day. What could anything inside this box possibly reveal? She hadn't a clue. And in fact, even if she had, it would not have prepared her for what she found. Chapter 3. First day, new face.
Of course, they're not going to tell us what was in the box. I know I want to know. All right.
1. The first day of school at Spokey Middle was always pandemonium. Logan stood in the fresh water wing and noticed how the whitewater windows bore such close resemblance to the students crashing down the hall. "I forgot how to read," someone boasted as he walked by with the circle of friends. "I can't hold a stylus anymore," shouted another, waving one around as if he'd never seen anything like it. The laughter and yelling of reunions in every direction were rough and unforgiving. Logan twisted and spun as the student body flowed violently past. Everywhere people compared tans, new clothes, dropped voices, marks, each worn like a badge of honor. Logan decided to skip the parade and head straight for class. "Hey, Logan, where you running off to?" said a voice somewhere behind him. It was Dane Harold, Logan's best friend and life preserver in the turbulent social waters of Spokey Middle development. "Dane," Logan said. "How you been?" It had been weeks since the two had seen each other, since Dane had spent most of the summer with relatives in downtown New Chicago. "I'm good, man. I'm good. Looking forward to computer science, though. I hear we're getting into compiler construction this year. I barely even remember how to quicksort." "First period?" Logan asked. "Yeah, right now." "Me too, man. That's awesome." So the two of them made their way to the old city wing. "Hey, it's Tom," Dane said, pointing the class president out across the hall. "Tom, you look awful. Didn't anyone tell you we were just on summer break?" It was only friendly teasing, but Logan couldn't help noticing Dane was right. Tom looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I'm pledging tomorrow," Tom said. "Been preparing all weekend." "Right on, man. Good luck," Dane said, and he and Logan pushed onward down the hall. "I turn at the beginning of next month," Dane told Logan. "Then I can finally start getting paid for my gigs. Stop relying on my stupid parents. First thing I'm gonna buy are some new whaling mitts." Dane was a cyberpunk rocker by night, lead singer and mitt whaler of his band, the Boxing Gloves. Even now he wore reminders of his alter ego, pants with a few wires coming out of them, and a shirt that changed color with the temperature, but always remained some shade of black. The look was out of style, a holdover from the late pre-Unity period, and flashier than the modest, practical, boring clothes worn these days. But Dane liked how it made him look different from the other students at Spokey Middle. His own quiet rebellion. "November for me," Logan said. "Can't say I'm very much looking forward to it, though." "Why not?" Dane asked, kicking another kid's leg. "Hey, watch it!" The kid swung around, but his expression immediately brightened when he saw it was Dane. "Dane, how you been? Find me at lunch, okay?" Logan didn't know the guy, but it never ceased to amaze him how much everyone liked Dane. "You got it," Dane said. Then he turned back to Logan and continued their conversation as if uninterrupted. "Why wouldn't you want the mark?" "Well, you know, my sister," Logan said, and Dane stopped dead in his tracks. "I forgot," he said sincerely. "I'm sorry." It was moments like this that made him such a good friend. Dane elected to stay in the hall another few minutes, joking around and teasing girls he thought were cute. But Logan was eager to get to class. Even in school, he worried about being followed, and in the hallways it was always too crowded to tell for sure who was watching. Logan hated crowds. Being the first one in, he had his pick of seats, so as usual, Logan chose a back row desk in the corner. He liked to be able to see the whole room in front of him, with his back to the wall. More comfortable that way. Safer. The rest of his classmates arrived in a trickle at first, like a leak from the flood of students outside. But by the time the bell rang, the room was buzzing with the same crowded energy as the halls, and Logan thought of this as a cruel trick of osmosis. He was glad to have no one behind him. "Hello, world," Mr. Artie said, just as Mr. Artie had every morning for 20 years. "Hello, Mr. Artie," the students said in a lackadaisical attempt at unison. It was only their first day of school, but all of the kids in Spokey Middle already knew Mr. Artie well, as he'd taught each of them since the first grade. Mr. Artie was famous in Spokey, known well by parents and students as the best computer programming teacher around, and that was in large part because Mr. Artie was a computer program himself. Not one to waste time with small talk or tangents, Mr. Artie launched straight into the day's lesson, appearing on holographic form on everyone's tablet computers simultaneously, each instance of him discussing with passion of how one might go about passing the Turing test.
Okay, so here we do come back to our main character, Logan, and we get to hear about kind of like a day in the life at school. Now we're all doing virtual schooling, and they're talking about seeing a holographic teacher who's a computer program on their tablet. So, I mean, you guys can relate a little bit. Okay, let's hear part 2.
2. The rest of the morning was a blur. History this year would focus on the period leading up to the States War and the founding of Dome following the success of the MARC program in Europe. Mrs. Henry began with a speech trying to personalize the subject for her students by asking any who'd gotten the MARC over the summer to raise their hands and share a little bit about their experience. "I got a job at the supermarket," one boy said. "It's nice to be eligible for work." "I'm looking forward to voting," a girl admitted, and the teacher nodded. "That's right," she said. "Parliamentary elections this spring certainly couldn't have come at a more fascinating time in politics. Has anyone here been following the story between General Lameson and Silas? Would anyone like to share their thoughts about that?" Logan raised his hand not once throughout the discussion. Somehow, he couldn't imagine Mrs. Henry much wanted to hear about his family's experience with the MARC program. Something about his sister's story didn't quite seem to fit with the day's lesson plan. In math, they learned about imaginary numbers. In art, they drew holograms. In English, they analyzed the themes and common symbolism of modern post-unity literature. At lunch, they discussed the new girl. It wasn't often that Spokey got a transfer student from another town. There might have been one new student a year, maybe, and whoever it was invariably became the topic of all September and early October gossip. "You met her yet?" Dane asked, taking a bite out of his sandwich before he interrupted himself with a look of mild disgust. "What's the matter?" Logan asked. "Corn." He held it out. "I'll trade you." Logan scrunched his nose and shook his head. He knew full well that meat was hard to come by since the AU rapid environmental decline, and that vegetarian alternatives had become increasingly popular in its place. But that didn't make Logan a sucker. "I'll stick with my peanut butter, thanks." The two of them sat on the sports lawn with the rest of the 8th graders, who made small clumps around the field and picnicked with their lunch bags, despite the sweltering midday heat. "Whatever," Dane said, throwing his sandwich back in its bag. "I hear she's from Beacon." Logan shrugged, talking again about the new girl. He always seemed to have interesting gossip. Being paranoid had its advantages. "Oh, yeah? I bet she hates Spokey. Apparently her dad's a government guy." "Anything interesting?" Logan frowned. "Standard. Government work. Who knows? Her mom's a big-shot financial something or other, though, on Barrier Street." Dane frowned. "Well bred." "Looks like it," Logan agreed. "Hey, guys. Happy, lunch break," Haley said, creeping up behind them out of nowhere. "Man, Haley, do you have to do that always? Act so weird all the time?" Dane turned around, pretending to be annoyed. Haley laughed, but didn't look up from the ground. "Hi, Haley," Logan said, and Haley waved. She still didn't look up. "You have a good summer?" "Yes. You?" Haley kicked idly at the clump of plastic grass. "Fine. Hey, we should hang out more." Haley paused. "What'd you do, Dane?" She eyed his outfit. "Find any time to wash those clothes?" Dane sneered at her. "Mostly rehearsed with the boxing gloves, actually, when I wasn't in New Chicago." Haley shrugged. "You know, my band," Dane said. "We're playing a concert at the end of the month." "Man, you're weird. Why are you so weird, Haley?" Haley shrugged again. Dane kept talking. "Rode around on my new roller stick, too." "Oh, hey, Logan, did I tell you I got a roller stick?" "No." "Don't you need a mark for that?" "Well, fine, it's my dad's technically. But it'll be mine soon enough." Just 4 weeks till... Your pledge, we know. Logan rolled his eyes, and Dane made as if he were going to hit him playfully. Guess that's the other thing I did this summer, Dane said. Studied. Quick, ask me anything. Ask me about the inclusion. Let's not talk about it, Logan said. Mm-hmm. Haley nodded. No one had anything more to say. Well, I'll see you then. Was it possible Logan saw her wink at him before she walked away? But that was too weird to be true. As late as 5th grade, Dane, Logan, and Haley Phoenix had been inseparable. They spent weekends together. They studied together. They played sports together. 2 years in a row, they'd been champions in the Spokey Elementary Hover Dodge League. And Logan had been pretty sure it was mainly due to the fact that the three of them had such good communication. A wave of the hand or a nod of the head was all he ever needed from either of them to know exactly what they were going to do next. At night, the three of them would often message one another on their tablets at exactly the same time. On holidays, they'd send identical electronic greeting cards. It was just that kind of friendship. They'd spent summers together, too, at that hippy-dippy sleepaway camp, Underbrush Woods up north. This was before Lily died, before Logan became afraid he was being followed, back when he never worried about anything. They had all liked it there, because the rules were loose and the three of them could spend their days halfway into the small, thin patches of what remained of AU's northern forest, looking up at the leaves and clouds and talking about how they'd be friends long after each of them was marked and married and raising grandchildren. Then between 5th and 6th grade, biology played a mean trick. Gradually, Dane realized, much to his alarm, that he might someday like to be more than just friends with Haley. And that would have been fine, a manageable emotion at least, except for the twist that came 1 week later, when Haley approached Dane to admit that she'd fallen for Logan. And wasn't it funny? And what she really needed to know now was what Dane thought she should do about it. Logan never did hear about the epic argument that erupted between Dane and Haley that day. Neither of them told him about the feelings and jealousy Dane admitted to, or of the embarrassment Haley felt. And Logan never did understand why the relationship between his two closest friends went so suddenly cold in the final weeks of that summer. He assumed it was just natural when Haley quietly faded from the two boys' lives the following school year. That it was just the course of things when she started spending more and more time with other girls, or when she fell in with those elusive, cooler kids last year, at whom Haley hinted every once in a while when the three of them made awkward conversation at lunch or on the way home from school. And Dane, for his part, buried his feelings as best as he could, protecting himself and saving his friendship with Logan in the process. She is so weird, Dane said to Logan now, though Logan couldn't help but notice him staring at Haley till she was out of sight. Cool about the roller stick, anyway. I've always been terrified of those things. Logan shrugged. Dane nodded, accepting the change of subject. Hey, is that her? He asked, and Logan squinted across the field. It was the first time he saw her, Erin Arbiter. She was sitting on the plastic grass, eating cornbread alone, and Logan said, I don't know, though he was somehow sure that it was. What's she doing? Looks like she's talking to herself, Dane said, but Logan didn't notice that. Instead, he noticed her hair, straight and copper all the way down to the small of her back. He noticed her eyes, shining cobalt blue in the sunlight. He noticed her clothes, which couldn't possibly have come from Spokey. Kids from Spokey wore local fabrics, mostly drab shades of cotton, wool. But hers were loud, bright, and synthetic. She was foreign somehow, different, better. She was beautiful. Talk to her, Dane said, seeing the look on Logan's face. I dare you. I don't know, Logan said, but Dane laughed and gave him a good hard push in the right direction. And somehow Logan's feet just kept right on walking after that.
All right. So we got some background knowledge on Logan and his family and his friends and stuff like that and where he's from. We got some background knowledge on Erin and her family and where they're from. And now we're beginning to see them intertwine. Okay, so I don't know that he's going to talk to her or not. Most likely, I would assume he would. So we'll hear more next time. So we just finished up with chapter 3, part 2. And chapter 3 has 5 parts, I believe. So we'll get the rest of that next time. I'll definitely be posting it more consistently. So I can't wait to hear you, and I hope you're enjoying the story. And if you're not, you're probably not watching this. And I'm okay with that. It is a great story, though. So I hope you're enjoying it. Bye.